great privilege yet again to be live streaming this afternoon with a dear friend of mine. You can see pictured on the screen here, Reverend George Kalu, a phenomenal gentleman that I've got to know over these past couple of years. And I thought it would be a fantastic opportunity and great to spend some time talking with him, not necessarily interviewing him as such, but interviewing him, if you know what I mean, just trying to picking his brains, getting his wisdom and his take on a lot of things. He's a man of a lot of experience. So he will be talking in a few moments. Just one or two things as people start to come online. May I encourage people who are watching, if you want to post comments, please do, and we can post them online. But the one thing that I would ask of you is, for those who are watching, could you share this broadcast whilst we're live? That helps the Facebook algorithms to promote the broadcast more. So it would be good if you could just share it to your friends, to your Facebook pages, to family, to your churches. All those areas would be phenomenal if you could do that for us. That would be good. The post anyway will be available afterwards on replay on Facebook, but it will be on YouTube as well under my name there, Reverend Keith Poole. So you can find that. But let me stop talking, because I'm sure you'd rather hear what my good friend Reverend Dr. George Kalu has to say. So George, let me welcome you. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Thank you, sir. Keith, my good friend. It's really good to join you this afternoon.
Great. Thank you, George. Now, just as a brief introduction, do you just want to just give people a short introduction to who you are, so people have some understanding of what you do, your background, where you're from, and that type of thing? And that would be fabulous if you could for me.
Okay. Well, just as Keith has introduced me, my name is George Kalu. I'm a minister of the United Reformed Church here in the UK. We are based in a church in a little town called Swanley, beautiful little town in Kent. Originally, I'm from Nigeria. I grew up, but it's interesting. I was born in Cameroon, which is a neighboring country to Nigeria. Okay. And then I moved back to my country, Nigeria. I grew up there, went through schools, and then I got a calling into the ministry, and the Lord guided my steps into the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria. Now, that was a very big step for me, because becoming a Christian in my secondary school days, I began to look outwardly. But when it was time for really answering the call, the Lord drew me back to my family church, as some people will call it. And that was how my ministry started in Nigeria, 1995. But I moved to the UK in 2006, which was about 11 years into ministry in Nigeria. And I've been a minister of the United Reformed Church since 2010. So this is 10 years ministry in the United Reformed Church. So if you put it all together, this is 25 years of ministry, the Lord's calling.
So what made you leave the sun of Nigeria to come to the rain of the UK? What was the motive? What was the reason behind bringing your family over here?
Yeah, it's really another long story, but the short version of it is that when I had spent about 10, 11 years, as I said, in ministry in Nigeria, the Lord began to lay on my heart the need to gain some broader experience.
Okay.
I began to sense the Lord pull me out to say, I have something more for you. Well, so that led me to come to the UK to do a master's degree in Gloucester, a very good school, mission training center called Redcliffe College. Mm-hmm. I did a master's degree there, 2006 to 7. And I was about going back to Nigeria, but I had that Poole again saying, "Do you want to come back to do this some other time, or do you want to finish it once and for all?" And that actually ignited my passion to do a PhD. But meanwhile, as I was contemplating doing that, my wife and I had been involved in some charity work back in Nigeria with young people. Especially, we were concerned with the HIV/AIDS issues of the day. And so we ran a very small charity called Mission Africa back in Nigeria. So we did that, but it was through that particular ministry that the Lord opened another door for my wife to get a scholarship to come and study here in the UK. So it was like I was on my way back to Nigeria. My wife was on her way to the UK. That told us then was a confirmation that the Lord wanted me to stay longer to finish my own study. And so my wife came over in 2008 to do her master's degree. And so that was, as I said, a confirmation. And so we had to bring over our children because it was either I went back to Nigeria to be with them, and then she was here studying, which the first time I did that, it wasn't a good experience. So we thought we needed to be together as a family. So that is how the beginning of my being in living in the UK actually started.
I've said this to you before. I'm so fascinated by the fact that a Nigerian man is a vicar, pastor, a leader in the United Reformed Church. That to
Right.
me is just fabulous. That is such that can only
That's another
that can only be a
story.
God thing. That a man comes so far from another country to the URC in Britain. How do
John,
you, how do you
tell you
find
about
that?
that.
How do you find that? How do you find that experience of
I
leading a
know
church?
that the next question.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, what happened was that when I came over here, the natural thing for me was to look for a Presbyterian church because being a minister of the Presbyterian church, I just wanted to continue to serve the Lord. But in my college, in Redcliffe College, we were spread out to local churches, and there was this Kendall Road Baptist Church, and the minister was a very good man. We were, as I said, distributed to local churches, and I was sent to Kendall Road Baptist Church,
Okay.
and that was where I was worshiping most of my time in college. I struck friendship with him, but while doing that, I was still wondering where are Presbyterian churches? I couldn't find any,
Yeah.
and then someone told me what is the United Reformed Church is what used to be the Presbyterian Church that merged with the Congregational Union in about 1972, in the 70s, and then that brought up this United Reformed Church. So I began to inquire, and I got to know the local URC church in Gloucester. And then the minister at that time was unwell, and she was about to move. Her husband went into ministry, and so that church became vacant. And they were looking for people to fill up their vacancy in preaching on Sunday. So I got involved with that church and a string of local churches around Gloucester. And as I was ministering Sunday to Sunday from time to time when I was rotated to do that, I then got to discover that the United Reformed Church um, had paucity of ministers. We didn't have enough ministers to go around, and we still don't have even today. So that became another burden the Lord was laying on my heart. It was like, now you see why you need to be here. There's work for you here to do. Then, as I said, when my wife came over, and then she was doing her master's in Newcastle, so we had to move up north to Newcastle. That's actually where I even got more involved in the ministry of the United Reformed Church. And I was being invited to, a string of churches around Newcastle, Northumberland, and so on and so forth, Sunderland. I was going about the whole place preaching. And then, one thing led to another. And the Lord opened the door because for you to become a minister, you needed to go through a process. And so the Lord actually made it clear to me at that point, 2009, and yeah, 2009, yes, it was, to say, this is what I was telling you, that I need you here in the UK. There's work in Nigeria, but this is where I need you. And so it became very clear to me the Lord needed me here. So I applied for what we call certificate of eligibility for ministry in the United Reformed Church, because we have a process where those who are ordained in our what we call a family of Reformed churches across the world could actually come and work in the UK with the United Reformed Church
Okay.
if they are so, called, and if they pass through the necessary processes, which I did, and I was pleased by the grace of God that that happened and happened. It took place, and I began to minister 2010 in Birmingham. That was my first ministry. That's how I became a Midlands person.
You've not picked up the accent though, so that's a good sign.
No,
That's
I didn't.
that's.
Make sure.
Now, for those watching, that's where myself, George, and his wife first met. We were both speaking at a conference in Birmingham Centre, and that's where we first connected a couple of years ago. So, and I have been down to George's church in Kent, and I have to admit that the people there, I have to, George will pay me later, I'm sure, but the people, no, seriously, the people there that I've met were a fantastic group of people. Um,
Yeah.
Good hearts, open to learning, open to growing. So yeah, you have a great place down there, to lead a church. So all credit to yourselves and your family. Now, for those who may or may not have seen George, but George, for those who've ever seen The Sound of Music, the film, and you have the Von Trapp family. You have the admiral who sings, and then all the children all sing as well. Now, George's family is like the Nigerian Von Trapp family, aren't you, George?
Tell you something. Can I tell you something? Someone in my church, the wife of one of my elders, that was exactly what she called us, the Von Trapp family.
Oh, is it okay? Now, when lockdown started, obviously we weren't allowed to go into the physical church building, and George has continued doing church services. I believe the first week you were in the building, but
Yes, the
since then you've been in
first
your home.
couple of were in the building. Yeah.
Now, I'll let you explain. Why do I call you the Von Trapp family?
Okay. Well, the Von Trapp family, Sound of Music, popular movie of many years back. Well, what happened actually is we were talking about it just a couple of days ago, if not yesterday, my wife and I. We've had a few prophecies about my daughter, that she has a music ministry. But one thing we've done by the grace of God is not to put pressure on our children. We know their capacity, and it's always good to read them and know exactly what they are comfortable with. But before the lockdown, our first son began to say he wants to help with playing the drums because he can play the drum very well in the church. But then he's an undergraduate in the university, so he's not always home.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever he comes home, he discovers that some Sundays, whoever is playing the drum may not be there. So he then offered to help because he self-taught playing drums. Then my daughter knows how to sing and was learning to play the keyboard. My second son, who is the middle person, learned how to play this cajon,
Oh,
drum,
that's
this
a great
box.
instrument, that is.
Exactly. So my wife learned to play the guitar while we were in Birmingham. I went to the classes with her, but I dropped her because I didn't have the patience. So, but she also from time to time has led music in the church, sang special, numbers, we'll call it. But when this thing happened, that churches were closed, and then we began to do this online worship. Well, of course, there was no way to bring the worship. We have a very good worship team,
Yeah.
but there was no way to bring them together to lead the worship while I was preaching. So it fell on the family to begin to put something together. So that is how they all rallied together to support the worship. Every Sunday, they were there with me doing the service, and they still are there with me currently because, as you see, people are still not able to meet together. So the gifts that was Latin, like my daughter, naturally she then began to gain confidence from Sunday to Sunday, but it's also helped that we've come to the house to do this because the ambience of the sitting room helps to capture the sound better than when we were in the big wide open church holo to try to capture the music. But so yeah, it's really more like stepping into a void and taking. That's again what leadership does. You step up when there is a need. And I really praise them for stepping up and stepping in and
Yeah.
helping to make sure that worship continued.
No, I've listened. You've seen me. You've seen my comments on Sundays, and I've watched and
Yes.
listened to you guys down there. And all credit to you as a parent. All credit to you and your wife as parents, and then as leaders of the church. Your two sons and your daughter with your wife do a great job. I'm pleased you don't sing with them. That's probably a good thing. But
When it comes to singing, I do try my best, but I can't play any instrument at all.
no, but your wife and your daughter do a good job. So that's a good. How has the church handled lockdown? 'Cause obviously you now been able to utilize your family more than previously. But how's lockdown affected your church down there?
Well, I mean, like every other church, everything has transformed into an online virtual church life. It's interesting that sometimes when God speaks to us, we 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 don't immediately catch it. It takes us time to be able to catch up with what God is saying. God told me last year to build a strong media team.
Yeah,
We began to do that, but we were slow. And suddenly, when this happened, we were thrown into the deep end because we hadn't actually put together all the tools we needed to make this happen. So, but quickly, we were able to assemble a team of very, very passionate people. We had someone who was running the church's Facebook, another person, the YouTube and the website. So we all brought them together. We appointed a coordinator who has done a fantastic job to lay out the procedures and proceedings for putting together the service. Now, that has helped us then to be able to continue as a church ministering to one another, because what we began doing at the beginning was to have a direct Zoom worship. But that wasn't good enough because, the challenge was when there is noise interference from here and there, it's not smooth.
mm.
And so it didn't really cut it. Then we began now to pre-record and put on YouTube before the rest of the church is able to. So we were now premiering at the exact time that we're supposed to start our service, 10:30 in the morning. But before that one, the Facebook one that you've thankfully supported by showing presence from time to time has been very fantastic. So we've done that one by 10 o'clock, more like a pre-service kind of worship before the main one that has all the components that we've put together, and it's worked very well. And how has it affected the church? The lockdown, definitely, there are people who don't have the internet age, people who are not used to doing some of this thing, but some of them have learned so quickly. When we have Zoom sessions, people have had to, like when we have house meetings. These cell groups, as it's called in other places, house meetings. Some members of our church who have had challenges setting up their internet have had to call in with their phone, landline, and they have called into the Zoom session. They don't see the rest of the people because there's no picture, and we don't see them. But they are part of the meeting because they are logged in with their phone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's helped people across the church to actually grow in their use of social media. The things that used to be like alien concepts have become everyday language. We've had, prayer meetings on Zoom.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll stop there so far.
yeah. Can I ask a question came to mind? It's
Yeah,
not meant to sound a loaded question, even though some may consider it to be. It's not meant.
yeah.
In view of the climate, we've seen for the last couple of weeks the.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's no problem. We've
My power source seemed to be running out. I didn't note that before we started, but I'm going to
no. That's not.
connect. Yeah, yeah. But go on with the question.
No,
While
I
I
was
look.
just going to say to you, we've had the situation in America, the racist situation, and the
Yeah,
Black Lives Matter, movement, you could say, for the last couple of weeks.
yeah.
Obviously, you've gone to a United Reformed Church, which is not really known for its black leaders or black vicars.
Yeah.
How have you and your family coming from Nigeria, coming to the UK, found that in Kent? What's been your
Well,
experience? Because a lot of people are making all sorts of judgments and statements, and I think sometimes they're making them a little bit rashly. But you're first hand here. You've come from another country several years ago. You're now leading what is a predominantly white church. Um, so you're in a unique position, really. You're in a very unique position. What's been your experience with the people, and generally, as a Nigerian man?
well, I think it's a very valid question, and these are challenges that we deal with in leadership. Even if it was a predominantly black populated church, they will still have, challenges because even among us, black, background believers, we also have maybe inclination to come from different countries. When you have Africans gathered together, we're not just from one country. As I said, I was born in Cameroon. I'm a Nigerian. I have Ugandan friends. I have, Kenyan friends, and we all come from different places. I have Caribbean friends. But we're all black. We all see ourselves as one. But the difference again from context where we grew up has its own effect, if you like, influence on us. Now, coming from Nigeria to the UK, you will expect that it was a culture change because Nigeria and the UK are two different countries in two different continents. One is predominantly black, or if not 99% black. I'm not sure. We have up to 1 million white people in Nigeria. So coming to the UK into a predominantly white, community, I think I would say I needed to have a culture change. I needed to learn. I needed to grow into the new context. And I think it's been a matter of growing, both for myself and for the churches I've pastored. Because you see, you get used to um, hearing me and maybe wondering, what did he say? But I've had quite a lot of respect among my members, and I don't think they ever think of the fact that I am African. I don't think it comes first to them because they are Christians. And I think that's very, very important. When people see themselves as Christians, first of all, before they begin to see the color of the skin, it changes the mentality, it changes the approach. But when people begin to see color, and then they begin to see from the perspective of supremacy and all of that, then that's where the problem is. The United Reformed Church as a denomination has helpfully provided a platform for people from the Black and Asian and minority ethnic groups. Because apart from Africans and people of African origin, we have ministers who are Korean. That will interest you. So we all form that minority group in the church, and they've created a platform for us to be able to gather together to share sometimes our frustrations and sometimes to support and encourage one another. And but in a lot of ways, the church is open. It's one of the very, very independent and sometimes I'll say democratic, churches, even though democracy has its own problems,
Yeah.
because again, it's a rule of the majority, isn't it?
Mm.
So sometimes the majority is not always right, but the majority can, be there to direct the tempo of things. But it means then that for a church that has the kind of principles of diversity and multiculturalism, it's a church that's provided that platform for everyone to thrive. They may not be perfect, like any other denomination or church is, but locally within my congregation, I have not experienced one incidence of anybody thinking I'm different, which is something to, celebrate.
Yeah.
Because the first thing we should know about ourselves is that we are human before we begin to know where anybody comes from.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's really good news,
Mm,
for the people down in Kent, and for the UK. When we hear, so much that all whites are racist. There's a clear example where that's not the case. You know,
yeah, it's not.
that's not
It's not
the
true.
case. I've met, I know your church. You have a lot of white people, black people, Indian people in the church. I've been there. So from you coming to them, there could have been also, there is a potential there, for all sorts of issues. So, that's wonderful. God, we know, but we sometimes forget. Where it says in the Bible, God looks on the heart, but man looks on the appearance, the outward appearance. Um,
Yeah,
so really, Christian people in the UK, you need to stand up and make a point,
yeah,
and become more inclusive in terms of race and culture and colour.
yeah,
We should lead the way in terms of change. Transformation. I was having a conversation over the weekend, and transformation has got to start with the heart. If we want to transform the UK or transform anywhere, Nigeria, even
yeah,
we can put rules in place, but we must
yeah,
always, if people's hearts don't change, the rules mean nothing. We can tear
yeah,
down statues in Bristol, and we can try and burn or deface the cenotaph. We can do all those things, but unless there's a change of heart,
yeah,
people, all those
yeah,
things become meaningless, really.
yeah,
So no,
yeah,
that's wonderful news. So post lockdown, we hear now that churches are going to be allowed to be open for individual prayer. That's an interesting one. Um,
yeah,
because all individuals pray, so that's an interesting that's an interesting definition. But
yeah,
churches are going to be open for personal prayer, and then I'm going to guess that corporate church and worship will follow in the next few weeks would be my guess. I don't know. I'm not Boris Johnson, but
Yeah.
from a church and from a leader, what does post lockdown look like for you guys down there? What are your thoughts on you as a leader and leading this group of people? What are your thoughts going into a post lockdown period?
Yeah, I think it's already begun with what I said about how we were thrown into the deep end with having to adapt from meeting in the building and now meeting online. And then we're going back to the building.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not going to be the building alone because it's now going to be both.
Mm.
We always had podcasts of our sermons online on our website. If you go to Christchurch Swanley website, you see some of those sermons. But right now, it's moved to another level that when we go back into the building, we are going to have worship in the building, but we also have to maintain the online, services because as you say, when we go back into the building, how do you even define individual worship in the first instance?
Yeah.
But then going forward, we know that the government is still giving directives for people of certain age not to, to be careful. So some people might decide for the time being to still want to continue with having that online community and communion and worship. So it is for us then to make sure that we don't lose one for the other, but that the two are carried along effectively. Now, what has happened is we have already set in motion a kind of task force to
Okay.
begin to plan the
Yeah.
transitioning back into the building. And that transition will have to involve at the beginning of this for us to what is happening in the shops. We're already mapping out the entrance and the outgoing traffic
Mm.
into the church. So we can still maintain a kind of distancing, and then we will mark out on the grounds the flow of traffic so that if you're going through the corridor, you maintain one side of the corridor against the other until we come to that time when everyone, is perfectly
Yeah.
at home. Now, that the reason why we are working this out is to ensure that we grant people confidence, because that's what leadership is all about, isn't it? Giving confidence to the people to know that we are thinking about their welfare, that we are planning to make sure we are not endangering them, because if we make them think we don't care what happens to them when they come into the church, then they're not going to come, will they? So it's for us as leaders now. What we're doing is doing planning. We have a health and safety department of the church, which I will encourage every church to make sure that they put together a health and safety department.
Interesting. That's an interesting one. Actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that department is, helping us. In fact, the coordinator has already written out for us some of the procedures that we need to put in place. So we make sure we put that in place. So I've talked about online presence still going on. We need to maintain that. I've talked about, the use of the building, how we have to put in place, health and safety measures, and if need be, some of those social distancing. Now, again, we have on a Sunday morning, twice in a month, two services. But what we are planning to do going back, we're now going to have it every Sunday, two services. And we will try to encourage people to balance out the numbers. And when we balance out the numbers in the two services, it means we'll be able to spread ourselves around the building, um, each of those services. And so we can have two services, quite right, but making sure that at this very beginning we maintain a good distancing procedure. So we're working ahead to make sure things are put in place.
Yeah. I've thought of doing that to help comply with the guidelines and that for a church, which is actually a fantastic thing to be doing. Actually, have you had any of your congregation voiced any concerns with the potential coming back into the building, or have they just, or are they just looking forward to the opportunity? What's been the response of the people?
Well, naturally, you are going to have both both sides of the coin. There are those who are excited and waiting for the whistle to be blown for them to start running back
Yeah,
into the building. And there are expectedly those who are saying, wait a minute, what are we putting in place? Which is why we're making sure that we are responding to some of those needs. They're not particularly against us getting together, but they are cautious optimism
yeah.
for them to say, yes, we're going to do this, but let's make sure that we don't endanger one another. So, yes, we've had those two aspects of perspectives of people in our church.
Okay. Just what's your? I believe. Did you say one or two? One son's at university. That's correct, isn't it?
One what?
One
Sorry.
son is in university,
Oh yes,
and your
yes. Our
second
first.
son and daughter at school or sixth form.
Yeah, the younger son, sixth form. The girl is going into sixth form now because they are transitioning into the next
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
So our second son, sixth form, is going to university this September. Our daughter, who was a GCSE year, is going into lower sixth form September.
Okay. How have they found this entire lockdown thing as young people? Obviously, we're older. So how have they found it as younger people? School and college, university. What's been? Have they struggled with it? Have they been thought it was a fantastic idea because they're not studying anymore, or what's been their take on it all?
It's interesting. They actually have been studying very hard.
Mm.
They've been studying very hard at home. You see, my younger son and daughter are boarders in a private school. Now, the school had made sure before they came home that they put in place continuous assessment and studies
Okay.
because they were not going to have the GCSE and A levels. They were in a year where that was critical for their move to the next level.
Yeah.
My son, especially, who was A level, he already had his predicted grades, but then the predicted grade is nothing until
Ah.
you take the exam proper, and then the exam board will give you your grade. So it meant that they were going to do this differently. And so that put everything actually up in the air. But the school is a very fantastic school. They made sure that the young people were still going through their studies. So it's been a busy time. The first son who is in the uni, he has had exams also through
Oh,
this
okay.
period. So they have been really studying.
No, they've not.
The good thing about our children is that they are quite a lot of indoor people. We actually have to chase them out sometimes. Say, hey, today you have to go out. If you
Oh,
want to
I
go to the garden,
I
or
saw that.
if you
I
want to
saw
take.
that football you were doing
Oh yes, exactly.
out in the garden. Yeah, I saw that one. Your Facebook post. I saw that. No, that's fantastic, there, George. So for those people who are interested in following you, what is the link for the church? The name, if people need to find it on Facebook.
Our church is Christ Church in Swanley. Christ Church Swanley. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Christ Church Swanley Kent. Once you type it in, the church will come up. And I also have my own Facebook account as well. George Kalu on Facebook. You'll find me there. Yeah, it will be wonderful if people can follow our services and they can, share and give us some thumbs up to encourage us. We will really appreciate that. Yeah, we're
So
online.
I think that'll be good because you mentioned to me some weeks ago about having a more of a an internet presence. You
Yeah,
were saying so from that point of view, for you to be more prominent on the internet, the more subscribers on YouTube, the more
yeah,
followers for your page. It
yeah,
it makes and more interaction. It makes your presence greater on social
yeah,
media, which will be good for you guys. So, let me encourage people. Find George on Facebook and Christchurch Swanley. Like these pages, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll be awesome. George, is there anything you just want to share with the people before we end today? Anything specifically that you want to say to people?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that we need to, especially as Christians, be sensitive to where the Holy Spirit leads us. Because sometimes we can be very happy in our little corners and we don't want to be disturbed. I was happy doing my work in Nigeria, and the Lord, laid in my heart to make that move. And when I made that move, it was just the first step to the next step, to the next step. You see, a lot of times God doesn't give us the whole complete picture, it's in His heart. But as we continue to inquire, God opens it gradually, and we begin to see one day at a time, one season at a time. So I would say to Christians, especially Christian leaders, be sensitive to the Holy Spirit, what the Lord is saying to you. The second thing I would like to leave with our viewers today is to say that leadership as a Christian is best done as a servant. To be a servant of the Lord first and a servant of the people, because sometimes we think being a servant means becoming a doormat. No, being a servant doesn't make you a doormat. You're humble, but you are not rubbish. You know who you are in the Lord, and you maintain your dignity, but you see yourself as a servant of all, like Jesus said. Um, there is an article I read recently by a man called Rob Asgar. He is in the he works with Forbes or Forbes. How do you spell it? Forbes or Forbes?
Forbes.
You know, it's Forbes. So
You never know with
the
English language. It could be anything, but
I know.
Forbes is
Well, some people don't know how to pronounce my name, so it doesn't bother me at all. So, but anyway, this gentleman was talking about how to be a natural leader, and he talked about, you know, um, being someone who is a, a, who has what is called internal gyro compass. This gyrometer that helps you to decide or get the true north. It helps you to be centered. It helps you to be grounded, to know exactly where you are.
mm,
But it also says a good leader should have a radar mindset. The radar, like people in air industry, the radar helps you to pick things around you.
yeah.
So the flight knows if there's another flight coming its way, and the people in the control tower can know what is happening. So the leader has that gyro compass in them, a strong leader, natural leader. That is the first and foremost thing. Then they also have that radar to pick up, sense what is happening around them. A leader who is not sensitive to know the mood, to interpret, understand what's going on. Like I talked about, culture change.
Mm,
I needed to, understand my context, my new context. I don't have to transport my previous context,
mm,
hook, line, and sinker, but to understand I'm in a different environment and then be able to still be who I am, God has called me to be, but then understand that I need to work that within the new context. And then the last thing is courage. Leadership cannot happen without courage.
mm.
Every leader, when every person else around you is falling apart, you should always tell them it is possible. You should always encourage them to know that it is not yet over. It is that sense of courage, which is what God told them, Joshua in the Old Testament. Say, be strong and courageous. For me, as a young person growing, maybe I'll use that to illustrate. I was a very timid young person. People who know me today will not believe it. They'll say it couldn't be because you can preach to anyone. Yes, today I could because of the Holy Spirit helping me. But naturally, I'm a shy person and I can just want to disappear. So as a young person, I was really timid. But when I became a Christian, full of the Holy Spirit, timidity went, courage came, boldness came. And so every leader needs courage, needs boldness. That internal compass I talked about, I can interpret it to mean the Holy Spirit in you, guiding you and directing you, and then building your confidence to know that you are in the right direction. And people will follow you when they know that.
Fantastic, George. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. You are true. I you're a man of wisdom, and that's what I like about you. When I say this with all honesty and respect. I like when you speak. I could listen to you all day. Um, you know, seriously. You bring wise thoughts, wise points. Things that are applicable to people to help you. Help you be a better person, help you be more successful, if I could use that phrase, to thrive. That's a nice word, to thrive as a person. So, George, I thank you for that. Thank you for those those good words that you've shared with us. And for everybody watching, we're gonna end the broadcast in just a few moments. But I'd encourage you to re-listen to this again. Go on to YouTube. Rev, Keith Poole is the name of the YouTube channel. If you do search for George, you'll see a copy of this on George's Facebook page and on the church, Christchurch Swanley's page also. So I just hope it's been a blessing to everybody who's watched, everybody who's listened, and George, we'll do it again sometime. Is that possible?
Yeah, we will. By God's grace,
And
yes. I'm
maybe,
happy.
and maybe, I had this thought as we were speaking. Maybe it'll be good to bring your wife also,
Okay.
so the two of you
Yeah.
can talk as a couple and share
Yeah.
some of your thoughts. As a husband and wife, pastor and his
Yeah.
wife. That might be useful to a lot of people for the two of you to share together on something. So, if that's a possibility, we can arrange that for the not too distant future. I think that'll be
Yeah.
a fantastic thing to do. Is that
Yeah.
is that good?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll do that.
Good.
Yes. Yes. I'm sure she'll be happy to
Wonderful.
be involved. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, George. So, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all the people, all the names that I've been seeing flashing up on my iPad on my right, who've been watching and logging on. So, George, let me thank you once again. God bless you. And
Thank you. Bless
church
you.
down in Swanley. And when lockdown is ended, I will pay you a visit.
Yes, definitely. You're welcome.
Bless you. God bless everybody. Bye for now.
Bless you.
Bye, George.